South Korean media reporting that North Korea is still willing to meet face-to-face. This, as Defense Secretary James Mattis says that the summit may be back on. Here to discuss retired U.S. Navy Captain William Parker, who's the former U.S. Naval Surface Force Chief of Staff and current COO of East-West Institute. Captain, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So, the negotiations. I know they've been pretty, for a lot of people who aren't accustomed to these kind of negotiations. Is this where the president thought he would be? The sort of bluster pulling out of this with that letter yesterday was a little dramatic. The mainstream media thought it was a mistake, but it looks like it was pretty smart in hindsight.
I don't know exactly where the president thought he would be at any one specific moment, but what I can tell you is this is very normal procedures for these types of negotiations. Just like your lawyers here in New York City and around the world, it's very common for them to walk away from the table and say, once we get to the point where we've closed the gap, we'll go back and have a discussion again, and that's exactly what's happening here.
Do you read anything into how quickly, though, North Korea said, hey, no, we want to do this, the world wants to see this, and even talk of perhaps them being interested in the so-called Trump formula, maybe that somehow President Trump has figured out a way to make this work for both sides?
I read a lot into this. One, they realize they have a president here that is unpredictable, and that is good when you're dealing with a country like North Korea. And two, you have a president that is willing to leave all of the instruments of national power on the table. And that's different than what we've seen in the past. Diplomatic, information, military, economic, financial, intelligence, and law enforcement. All of those instruments of national power are being left on the table, and that's what is making this president successful as he moves forward in negotiating with the North Koreans.
What, again, will the ultimate package perhaps look like? Because we know a big component of this, and President Trump has gone out of his way to articulate it more than once, that Kim Jong-un would remain in power, that we would make sure, I guess, there weren't any coups, that he wouldn't have to worry about anything like that. He wouldn't have to worry about what he perceives to be the Libyan model, what ultimately saw Gaddafi being slaughtered by his own people. But what else would be a part of that? Denuclearization is a big step for North Korea. That's the only currency that they have.
That's right. I think you've got three steps. Step number one is you're looking at stability. Step number two is you're looking at democracy. And step number three is you're looking at the unification. That will be a many-decade process. Stability starts with denuclearization of the peninsula.
What does North Korea get? We say give up your nuclear ambitions. This is the only thing that you've got going for you. And we know other folks who've given this up were sooner or later deposed, right? So how much money do they get? How much commerce do we promise them immediately? Because remember, recently President Trump says that your people will be rich, that they will be safe, and that they will be happy.
Right. So I think you have to look at who the big losers are if we have a combat event there. And the big losers are China with their economy, which will be significantly impacted, and Korea for a variety of reasons, including the 25 million people that are there. If you look at the bigger picture here, though, what happens if you leave those nukes in place? You end up with a nuclear South Korea, a nuclear Japan, which means you increase the nukes in China and their other technical capabilities, which means that Iran looks and says, hey, wait a minute, North Korea got away with it. Now you end up with a nuclear Middle East, and that's a problem.
Yeah, the doomsday clock would probably hit midnight if all of those things occur.
Absolutely.
Captain, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. We're going to see you, by the way, later on in the show. But right now I want to bring in our panel, Kelly Jane.